asleep at 3:36 a.m. I lifted my head slightly in annoyance. I was too tired to answer and decided to just ignore it. Again, the phone rang. I grabbed my phone off of the nightstand and said hello. My father said through the other end, "Who is that?" "Who is who?" I asked. "The person who just answered the phone." I opened my eyes completely and told my dad that I was alone. "James, a man just answered your phone." I felt a cold chill come up my back and looked around my room. I told him I was alone again, and he told me that somebody had definitely just answered my phone. I asked him what they said, and he said it was a man who sounded elderly, and he was singing. I told him I had a phone downstairs, and he told me I should probably call the police, and I did. A short while later, I heard a knock at my door. The police looked around my house, but didn't find anyone or anything out of place. They left, and I called my dad back and told him he must have been mistaken, that the police checked everywhere with me, and we found no one. Then I asked why he called in the first place, and he said it was because my phone number had called him first. I felt sick, wondering if somebody was actually in my house, hiding. Nothing else happened that night. The next morning I checked my house again, but found nothing out of the ordinary. I went about my day and chalked it up to my dad just having made a mistake. Night number 2. I awoke at some point in the middle of the night to the sound of my bedroom door opening. I wasn't facing the door, but quickly turned around to see a figure in my doorway back up and disappear into the darkness. I was too scared to move or speak. I sat in bed hyperventilating and staring at the doorway. After about 10 minutes, I had built up the courage to turn around again and pick up my phone. When I did, I heard nothing. The phone downstairs was off the hook. Then, I heard breathing. I sat holding the phone in absolute terror and had many fleeting thoughts in only a few moments. I can't believe this is happening. I could possibly die tonight. And then finally, I said out loud, "Please just get out." The person then hung the phone up. I hung my phone up as well, and then picked it back up. A dial tone. I dialed 911, and the police were at my door shortly after. Again. I told them I saw somebody in my house, and I didn't bother sticking around with them to check. I left. I slept at my brother's house that night, and the next day after work, he followed me home. We sat in his car for a while debating on whether to call the police again to come help us check, but we decided against it and went inside. Once again, we found nothing strange in my house. After drinking a few beers, my brother left. About 1 minute after he walked out the door, my phone rang. It was him. "If you aren't upstairs right now, get out of the house. I just saw somebody standing in your bedroom window." I dropped the phone and bolted for the front door as I was struggling to undo the chain lock. I heard footsteps slam down the stairs right behind me. I opened the door and closed it once on the other side. I can't be sure, but I'm pretty sure someone was right behind me before I got the door open. I ran over to my brother in his car, and we both sat and scanned the windows frantically before calling the police for the 3rd time. He told me he didn't see the person clearly. This time, it took the police the better part of an hour to come out, and I tried telling them that whoever was in my house was hiding, and the person was still in there. My brother and I were told to wait in his car, which we had no problem with, while they checked my house again. A few weeks passed, and I experienced more frightening things in my house, but after a while, I finally came to the conclusion that my house was haunted. I never saw anyone's face, and there was no way an actual person could hide and never be caught over and over this whole time. I knew my house very well and had checked it several times inside and out. After a few months, I had gotten used to it for the most part. About 6 months after the first night that my dad called me, I met a girl. She hit the back of my car at a red light. She was freaking out. I wasn't upset though. She was so beautiful. The whole time she apologized up and down and offered to give me her insurance information, but instead, I asked if she'd agree to have dinner with me. She was surprised and shy, but she smiled and agreed. The next night I met her at Tony Paggio's here in town, a nice place with decent Italian food, but a great atmosphere. I could not stop staring at her. Her nose, her lips. At times, I found myself completely ignoring her because of her beauty. I did my best and heard about 90% of what she said that night. She liked me too, I could tell, as she bit my lip on my front porch. We clumsily made our way inside my house and kissed in the foyer for several minutes. We eventually stopped, long enough for me to offer coffee, and she accepted. Was I excited? Yes, but not for the typical reason. Yes, I definitely felt like I could have her, but I was excited because I didn't want to. I liked her that much. We drank coffee and talked into the early morning. When she finally left at around 7:30 in the morning, I was on cloud 9. We made a date for the very next night, and this time we walked through the community park, and I built up the guts to grab her hand. We did plenty of kissing that night too, and no, we didn't spend the night together. A couple of days after our second date, I went fishing with my dad and my brother on a Saturday like we normally do. We talked about my dad's surgery coming up, my brother's new job, and of course, the girl. Eventually, the ghost came up as well, and I remembered that when my dad told me that when the old man answered, he was singing. My dad laughed when I asked about it, and he said, yeah, he was singing that song. I think that one song, Kiss Me, by, my brother chimed in and said, "Sixpence none the richer." My dad nodded and confirmed that was the song. All he sang was that one main part. You know, kiss me beneath the milky twilight, or something like that. A few months had passed, and I eventually asked the girl I had met in our fender bender to move in with me. I had never mentioned the ghost. The thought of a ghost in her house frightened her a little bit, but she agreed to move in with me. Everything in my life was going perfectly. My job was going great. My father's throat surgery was a success, and he was recovering well, and I was falling deeply in love with the most beautiful woman. After 2 weeks, she started shaking me awake at night, scared to death, claiming she heard something or saw someone walk by our bedroom. What else is new? I'd ask her. She eventually got used to the ghost too. A few years had passed, and we had been together happily the whole time. I wanted to ask her to marry me, and decided it was the next thing in my life that needed to happen. I saved up a ridiculous amount of money for the ring I thought she deserved, and one evening, I took her to Tony Paggio's place, where we had our first date, and right before dessert, I did it. I told her I had to use the restroom, but as soon as I reached my feet, my knee hit the floor. She said yes. Nothing or no one could affect my happiness that night. When we got home, it was like the first time. We were kissing all the way up the stairs. She was pulling my hair, and she damn near ripped open my bottom lip. It was amazing. As we lay together on the bed, stripping off our clothes, I told her I didn't want to keep any secrets from her, and I told her that I hadn't slept with any other woman before I met her, and that I was terrified the first time we were together. I lit some red candles around my bed, and I was having the best experience of my life. She was sitting on top of me, but I flipped her on her back, and she said to me,
"James, I don't want to keep secrets either."
I told her, "Good," and she then said to me,
"It's not haunted."
Then she slowly sat up, looked me in the eyes, and said,
"Kiss me beneath the milky twilight."